Hey y'all, welcome and good night. Welcome to the Fred Hampton Leftist New Left podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Liv. We have with us another co-host, Andrew. Want to introduce yourself?
Top of the evening, night, afternoon to you, Andrew.
Yes, wherever you may be.
Morning.
We also have CJ.
How you doing?
Hi. We have Austin.
Hey y'all, eat the rich.
And we have Novi. Eat the rich. And we have Novi.
Austin's introductions never disappoint me.
Howdy, y'all.
Love it. And tonight we have some hot topics coming up for y'all. We're going to start off with Afghanistan. We're going to go to the eviction moratorium. We're going to talk about Hurricane Ida. We're going to talk about, in hot news, recent news, the Texas abortion law. And then we're going to talk about the Justice Dems taking dark money, and then wrap up with any Twitter trends and direct action updates. So, Andrew, I know you're usually the one who does our deep dives. Would you like to start us off?
Sure, with Texas, right?
We'll start with Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. All right. So, as we all know, since last week, when we did Afghanistan, there has been a lot that has happened, right? I think some of the bigger takeaways is that ISIS-K bombed Kabul airport, killing 13 American soldiers, which is something that the media has really been focusing on. And obviously, it's very sad that those 13 soldiers died, and thoughts are with their families. And if only the same coverage of people dying all this time throughout the last 20 years of American soldiers, which was over 2,500, got the same coverage, I feel like the Afghanistan war might have ended a lot sooner, right? And so that happened leading this past Thursday. It was a couple days ago. I forget exactly which day. They kind of blend together. There were two airstrikes that killed 10 civilians and 7 children, according to several different witnesses there. That the media, or as Jen Psaki, Biden's chief propagandist, said was a successful airstrike. And so those are the two biggest things that happened with Afghanistan. More and more soldiers have physically been removed, I think, to the point where we don't have too many left, if not any, right? Someone can correct me on that, physical soldiers there. And that is essentially kind of all of what have a lot of these conversations have been focusing on when it comes to Afghanistan. Would anybody like to add anything, or have I covered the majority of what's been going on?
Yeah, let me bring up the article actually for the two of you. Let me make sure I have the right article up here. Bring up another tab. Yeah, it's the article that kind of gives a little more information about what's going on. This one is from the antiwar.com, and it talks about the what we were just talking about, the drone strikes that killed 10 civilians, and the White House labeling that successful. Let me share that with you here. Okay, White House. All right, there you go. And if you like, I can read, because I know I have the article up a little bit bigger, so I can read it if you can't see it there. So the title, White House describes Kabul drone strikes that killed 10 civilians as successful. The Pentagon concedes it cannot dispute the account of witnesses who say the drone strike killed 10, including 7 children. The White House said Monday that the U.S. has carried out 2 successful airstrikes in Afghanistan since the ISIS attack at the Kabul airport, including Sunday's drone strike that witnesses said killed 10 civilians, including 7 children. So that is a little more, I guess, detail about what happened. And so, yeah, I'll throw it back to you.
I just wanted to quickly bring up for anyone who might be skeptical or be like, oh, antiwar.com, right? The number they got was from Al Jazeera, right? Typically, a platform that is pro-war in many cases. So that just shows of how I feel legit these numbers are, that 10 civilians did get killed. And it really is shameful that no one's really elevating this. No politicians are really talking about this at all.
Well, I mean, and didn't you say the White House is or they're admitting to it? Or I'm not you. I'm sorry. The article is they're conceding. It says that they concede that the account of the witnesses they can't.
Yeah,
that's their way of admitting it. That's so crazy.
Which I think Jen gave a much more kind of muddled response where it was like, I can't confirm nor deny, right? And whereas another source on there, it sounds like it said that, yeah, that did happen, or we need to further investigate, right? I think Jen brought up that we're investigating this matter. We need to further investigate, which I found very interesting because there never seems to be that much investigation when it comes to bombing terrorists, whether or not they're terrorists, right? We never actually give that much scrutiny, but we are investigating to tell you that it's civilians. That always is more, right? So that to me kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit as well when it comes to that.
I think it's pretty perfect, honestly. I think it's pretty perfect that how this mess is going on and how we're finishing it out. It's exactly America's brand, you know? I mean, my second tour in Iraq, I was in a drone unit, and that is exactly the stuff that happened. And, you know, the fact that they were going to punch, ISIS was going to punch us in the nose, somebody was going to punch us in the nose on the way out. Taliban did apparently did their best to protect us, which I have reason to believe because I think they want us out of there. I'm pretty sure Taliban didn't want ISIS-K to strike, but now we have a new enemy. Or, hey, remember this old enemy. And now ISIS-K is enemy number 1, which I think will lead us into Africa. But we shall, with more drones, but we shall see. Something else I was looking at is there's actually resistance going on in the Panjshir province, and they have a Twitter account.
And where is the Panjshir province when you say that?
So the Panjshir province is about 100 miles, I think, 70 to 100 miles north of Kabul. Okay. And it actually was a stronghold when the Soviets were there. And I will mispronounce this man's name. Commandant Ahmad Shah Massoud. He and now his son, who has questionable intentions, but his son is there. But this father fought the Soviets in the same valley, 40 years ago. And, well, I don't know. They look dug in like a tick. Today they captured a tank and some more equipment some a BM-40, which is a multi-launch rocket system. So there's something going on. To quote one of them, one of the tweets, a group of young men from Dara district will be heading to support the National Resistance Front at Kawak District, Panjshir Province. We fight against terrorist groups for our freedom, also to bring peace for all. So that's what's going on right after those bombs dropped.
I always ask, what do the U.S. think the family members of those kids are going to do? Because I know what I would do if somebody harmed my kids.
Well, that's exactly it.
Yeah, it's like the just ridiculous expectation that they're not going to come after us with everything they got. You're killing kids, man. Like that's just ridiculous.
This war and this war on terror writ large has now radicalized, I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands at least, against the United States. But let's put that aside. Let's put foreign terrorism to the side, because honestly, it's, we have in this country a domestic terrorist problem, a white domestic terrorist problem. These people have never been the problem, ever. These people are not, hell, it wasn't even it wasn't Pakistan or Afghanistan that bombed the towers. It was Saudis. But these, I mean, we are going to be dealing with the after effects of all this. I don't know how long. I don't know. The great game goes on.
Right. Maybe that's why, because it always feels like they're saying they're capturing and killing people, but it's like there are always more people, and that's because what you said. More, it seems like it's been radicalized, like more people than before because of these, casualties of war, these civilian casualties that, like, you radicalize somebody that may have not been radicalized before.
And I think one quick thing for me is I always think about how to explain this to somebody who's maybe more conservative or maybe more pro-war, right? And I think
a Christian Taliban.
Not quite. But, I always think of people who are always about national security, right? Like, we're putting our national security at risk. We always need to be over here because to protect our country from national security, right? And think about going off of what Austin and CJ were saying about the amount of people that just get radicalized, the amount of ammunition you give these groups like ISIS to further recruit people, right? How is that for our national security when you are adding on the enemies? Like, I'm not going to say people don't get it, because they do and they have ulterior motives. But I think a lot of people who are propagandized by a lot of the media don't realize that, like, they're not going to go away. These terrorist groups are not going to go away. And if we keep bombing them, if we keep killing civilians, right? If we keep killing family members, they're going to continue to add. And you're increasing the likelihood that they'll try and attack this country if they ever get the means and technology to do so.
But our government is telling us that they're wanting to get us because they're just evil and they hate our freedom. Like, it's such a scam. To me, it's a scam. It's such a scam on the people. Like, you're just, these people, like, they're almost defending themselves in some cases. And I'm not saying the ones that are committing violent acts. There are some that are doing some of those things. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying people that are radicalized just based off of their family member being killed, a civilian, kids. That's who I'm talking about. Those are people that weren't part of this before, but if these types of events radicalize them, it just seems like a never-ending cycle. You radicalize these people that weren't radicalized before, you go back and bomb, you tell us that it's something else, that they just hate our freedom, and not explaining that, no, this actually, these are family members of some kids we killed 10 years ago. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's just, so it's like self-fulfilling. Radicalize more people, say they're evil, go over, is all, and who benefits is the military industrial complex.
Yeah. I was hoping you were going to say that key phrase there, the military industrial complex, because we're America. That's what we do. And I also just really wanted to point out real quick before, in that Kabul attack, I have the Wall Street Journal article, which is the first I had heard of it. In that same attack that killed the 13 U.S. service members, there was also at least 90 Afghans that were murdered. And just real briefly, it was more than 100 people were killed, including at least 13 U.S. service members and 90 Afghans at the Kabul airport Thursday, when 2 blasts ripped through the crowds, trying to enter the American-controlled facility, disrupting the final push of the U.S.-led evacuation effort. A suicide bomb attack at the airport Abbey Gate was followed by an assaultment by gunmen, officials said. Another bomb attack took place nearby at a hotel outside the airport, officials said. 18 U.S. service members were injured, the Pentagon said. Okay, so out of that, all I heard about was the 90 Afghans, and that kind of made my jaw drop, and I want to know more. Okay, how old were they? Because I heard a lot about all the U.S. service members that were killed. What about the Afghans? What about all them that are left there right now? What about the humanitarian crisis that we've created that's enduring there right now? What about everything there that we've now created that we are not addressing, that I've not heard Joe Biden, the Democrats, mainstream media talk about once? How are we going to address this issue that we've created now that is all our fault? Why the fuck else were we in Afghanistan besides to create generational trauma, consume opium to suppress the working class, and make all the issues with that, and also now say, we've taken all this money and resources from you, Afghanistan. Oh, do you want our help now? Should we help you? Like, what is the sick game, the sick, twisted game of America?
Yeah,
Money.
I think it's quite disturbing.
Yeah,
That's it.
capitalism.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
Very simple. Only thing wrong with this world is greed. You know, well, the racism. Let's put that up top. Racism up there too. Yeah, that's.
That intersects a little bit.
I thought, Novi, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I did. Actually, according to the most recent reports, including the After Action report, it was 160 Afghan people who died, people of all ages, and a lot of them were killed in the aftermath when the soldiers were shooting into the crowd, which is unfortunately very common. Unfortunately, our U.S. government decides that civilian lives just don't matter. And they haven't mattered for a very long time, but it was almost codified in the Patriot Act with how vague they have to be when it comes to bombing and later using drone strikes. And they were talking about on the news, they talked about women's rights and the Taliban and how we were going to do that. If you go back 20 years before, they were also talking about women's rights too in order to get everybody on board. The Taliban is an extreme form of Islam, and it would not have taken hold if the Western powers would have just left well enough alone. But instead, they didn't, and it was a reactionary response. It's just more of the same, and we're doing this to create a perpetual motion machine to make each conflict worse and worse and worse. Because the U.S. thrives off of conflict. It has to have people in order to subjugate, in order to get their resources from, in order to create a boogeyman. Therefore distracting it from our own issues. Like, I don't know, a hurricane where it's an entire city is still without power and will be without power for 2 months. This strategy has been done for centuries, and unfortunately it's now the Afghans who are suffering the brunt of it.
It's terrible.
And yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that Novi and someone in the comments did that many of the Afghans were killed were actually shot by U.S. service members and were killed in the aftermath of the suicide bombing that killed the 13 U.S. service members that everyone was so happy and proud to talk about. And it blows my mind, like the glorification and the propaganda of war, and like, see, like, look what this did. Like, we need to go back. We need to seek revenge. We will do everything in our power. Like, first off, like what just Nofi said, like, why is the Taliban there in the first place? Like, why is ISIS-K in the first place? Because we were there. It's reactionary. It's from America and Western imperialism. That is the reactionary forces we are dealing with. And until we work on dismantling that, the military industrial complex will just keep perpetuating. Like Austin said, our next, the last uncharted territory is Africa. Where else do we have to go? Like, we're just going through the natural resources of the world right now. We're plummeting through our fossil fuel resources. Like, we're looking through the last reserves we have, and that's in Africa. So if we don't stop, we're going to just keep pummeling through. And then, you know, we're also really quick to jump on, like, what's the Republicans saying, impeach Biden because of the airstrikes or what's going on now because of Afghanistan. What about the illegal airstrikes he was doing in Syria at the beginning of his presidency? Right. He was a war criminal then at the beginning of his presidency. Like, let's talk about those illegal airstrikes that he was doing and the failure of a presidency he has been from the very beginning.
And I just want to kind of add to that real quick. You know, we talked about a few episodes back on Somalia, right? And the airstrikes on Somalia that killed Somalian citizens too. And so I think that brings up to the point. I know a lot of people have been frustrated when certain commentators on the left have been praising Biden, saying, all right, we're out of Afghanistan. That's over, right? That still doesn't change the fact that we could still drone strike people in Afghanistan, because we're always trying to make sure that we have control over those resources. So I think as time goes on, we need to be thinking, because the media is not going to bring attention to this, but we always need to be on our looking and thinking about, okay, in what other ways is Biden going to continue to invoke his imperialism on Afghanistan and such. And so always pay attention, I think, to what's happening behind the curtain.
I have a video that we can end with this topic with this video that I think it's with Kyle. Do you want to set it up, Andrew? I'm only going to play that snippet of the poll, but what is basically he's breaking down the poll is of what types of things while I'm setting this up here.
Okay, you got it? Or...
Yeah, can you just describe what we're
sure.
gonna be seeing?
Yeah. So I know we're only focusing on the poll. Relax, everyone. Right. I know people are tired of some of Kyle's takes, and I completely empathize and understand that. But he did bring up an interesting poll that I think is important to break down. And we're just talking about the poll. We're not going to highlight any his additional takes, but I think it's really interesting to hear what people think despite all the propaganda that's been going on about this war.
That's the part I wanted you to say. I felt like you could say that part more diplomatically than I could say. And that's why I wanted you to say that.
Well, that says a lot because you're a pretty diplomatic person at times.
Yeah, I should have warned you ahead of time that, hey, I want you to describe the video. I forgot about that. But let's play the video here, and I'll play it from 1:30. He kind of sets up the poll, and that's why I'm starting it there. So here we go.
63%. The way in which he's doing it and the media outrage orgy has made his numbers on Afghanistan plummet from a 55% approval rating, his highest, to a 25% approval rating. So Biden was getting hammered on this issue, and the media was relentless on this front. However, just like 63% of the country still said, I want out of Afghanistan, there's another fascinating fact I have to share with you. So this is from Morning Consult. Voters increasingly okay with Taliban takeover as consequence of military withdrawal from Afghanistan. Wow. So voters are like, okay, if the Taliban takes over, it is what it is. Look at this. From the same poll, Morning Consult political poll today. Do you believe the U.S. should still withdraw its military presence in Afghanistan if it means it creates an opening for Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups to establish operations in Afghanistan? Look at these numbers. 45% still withdraw. 40% don't withdraw.
Yeah, there we go. So, I mean, I think those are pretty shocking numbers considering what people have seen on mainstream media, in particular, how mainstream media, the spin of mainstream media about what's happening. I think the numbers would be higher probably if it wasn't so much pro-war propaganda. So that is the last video we had on that topic, Liv.
Yeah, I think what you just said, the pro-war propaganda, it by the mainstream media, which is controlled by the duopoly, it's shoved down our throats, and it's really hard to come around to the realization that that's what's been presented to you for most of your life, and for at some point you probably believed. That's okay. Just to come around and be like, you can change your mind. You can form new opinions with new information. That's okay. That is totally valid and okay. We encourage that here. But it's I don't know. I'm very anti-war. I don't believe in it at all. And I just think we are going to continue to find ways to stay in Afghanistan, and to promote the military-industrial complex, and also probably find new ways to spread imperialism and our terror in other parts of the world. I'm sure it's going to happen. If we do not stop this, this is what's going to keep perpetuating. This system will not stop unless we stop it.
Absolutely. Good to see you back, Austin. I have queued up the next video for the next topic, if you're ready.
And our next topic is, what are we doing? We're doing the eviction moratorium. Let's play that video.
Yeah. Now, this is a this is a Breaking Point video. So it is some good information. So same sort of disclaimer. If you have problems with breaking points, take the information instead. All right, so here is that video.
Really undercovered and incredibly significant story here. We brought you yesterday the news that Supreme Court did, in fact, as expected, strike down Joe Biden's eviction moratorium, the new one. Now we have new numbers about exactly how many people are likely to be at risk here. We can throw this up on the screen. This is according to Goldman Sachs. They say 750,000 households could face essentially immediate eviction because of the moratorium being struck down. That's unless Congress acts or rental assistance funds are distributed faster. And when they say faster, it's like immediate, it needs to be immediate, and it needs to be at a radically higher rate than what we've seen before. Next piece of information we have for you here is from the Washington Post. This is something that Jeff Stein tweeted out regarding the numbers of people who are already facing eviction and also how much of that rental assistance has gone out. So less than 11% of the $46.5 billion emergency rental assistance program first approved by Congress and then President Donald Trump in December, less than 11% of that money has gone out. We talked about here how too, even after Biden does the eviction moratorium, the new one, and it's basically like, look, this is effectively a stalling tactic so that more of this money can get out the door. States and localities did not do any better in July than they did in June. They did not ramp up the relief funding for tenants and landlords whatsoever. So people are completely screwed. Washington Post says in the Atlanta area, I'm reading from their story now, Thousands of eviction filings have already piled up in court, ready to be processed. In New York, which has been terrible about getting rental relief funds out, renters are waiting months for rental assistance to arrive and running out of time. In North Dakota, a legal aid nonprofit has 10 attorneys to cover 70,000 square miles, and evictions are already far outpacing lawyers' ability to help. One more problem to layer on top of all of this is that rents have gone up significantly. So in June, the average rent for an apartment in America's 150 biggest metro areas hit $1,513. That is the highest ever recorded, and an increase of 6.3% compared to the same time last year. So people who weren't able to afford the homes they were living in and are evicted are only going to find even more expensive properties that they are even more unable to afford going forward. It's a catastrophe. Congress is completely asleep on this. They haven't even tried. And look, I know they want to say, oh, the Republicans are going to be a problem. The Republicans probably will be a problem, but you haven't even tried. So this is an absolutely disastrous and unconscionable situation that people are facing now.
I think one of the things that struck me in this Axios report was that, look, you can actually prevent a late 2021 spike in evictions, not through any new legislation whatsoever, just through distributing the funds on the books.
Just get the money out.
Just getting the money out on the books. That does solves all problems, actually, which is that the people who are behind on their rent and who were promised rent money will get that. The landlord, who's behind in paying whoever they owe money to, will also pay back. It doesn't distort the rental market nearly as much. And I think this is just a failure of public policy all around, which is that it was a problem that we recognized, that we specifically distributed funds towards, and then completely failed to do that, and you started pitting people against each other. That's the part that really makes me the most upset here, because you really just see how if you take the rug out from under, then yeah, people are going to start fighting, and then, the eviction groups versus the landlord groups. And I get it, like, I'm not standing for landlords or anything, but there are a lot of people who, work in that or work as managers, superintendents, or whatever. There's a lot of jobs. It's a huge industry as well.
I think we can stop there. They kind of go into a little bit more of a tangent. I'll pass it back to you, Liv, but I just think that it's very suspicious to me that 40 some odd million billions of dollars have been approved and only 11% given away. That is just suspicious, that it's free money and the states are just not sending the money to the people who need it. Mm-hmm. And we have an eviction moratorium on top of that. Like, that to me smells suspicious to me.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, did you do a deep dive? Did you follow the money?
So I wasn't able to follow the money as closely as other times, but I will say a couple of things. In regards to the eviction moratorium, I saw one tweet, and someone said this, and I don't know if it was someone famous or just a tweet that really stuck out to me, but it's that Republicans stab you in the chest, Democrats stab you in the back, right? And I think that is a lot of what is happening here. But I think while we are talking about money, it's interesting to bring up what we have right here, which is a U accountability. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to enlarge this. U accountability is basically a non-profit organization that is a watchdog on corruption, our government, right? Big corporations. Okay. And so I think it's important because you see so many different Wall Street videos, or not videos, but articles talking about what's going to happen with the landlords, right? The landlords are struggling throughout, this whole eviction moratorium. And this right here actually shows that certain large real estate corporations who actually have profited through and have done very well throughout this eviction moratorium. And so if we go up and we look at the top, right? So first of all, industry's strong opposition to the eviction moratorium seems particularly ruthless given the fact that major publicly traded real estate companies have reported strong or stable performance throughout the pandemic. The top 5 residential REITs, which own and operate rental properties, have reported positive outlooks to investors and have spent lavishly despite the moratorium. And so we go down to 5. Equity Residential, for example, which represents 20% of the apartment REIT market, reported considerable positive momentum, collected 97% of its expected residential revenue in Q1 2021, and pulled in over $2.5 billion in rental income in 2021. In 2020, Equity boosted its CEO's pay by over $1 million to $7.6 million, who was poised to sell his $1.4 million 8-bedroom home in August 2021, right? And so if we go and look at all these other real estate associations and such, Mid-America Apartment Communities represents 13% of the market and is the largest U.S. apartment owner. Since its balance sheet was in great shape, right? Collected 99.1% of its billed rent. So let's just be clear here. The eviction moratorium was not causing any of these large companies to suffer, right? And they, as we've covered in several of these other shows, Democrats take in so much money from the real estate companies, right? Nancy Pelosi, the DCCC. And so, when we talk about how, going back to the quote, how Democrats stab you in the back, right? Yes, they have been talking about how it's important. We've been talking about how the eviction moratorium has been terrible, right? They knew the Supreme Court was going to say this is not okay, right? They knew that it was a stall point, that it was only a matter of time that the Supreme Court would say, no, we cannot continue the eviction moratorium. And still, they did not come up with any legislation. Nancy Pelosi is just saying now that we need to come up with legislation now, right when they strike it down. And so this is just to kind of break down at how when you are bought by these special interests, of course, you're not going to just be like as tactless in the Republicans and say, you know what, fuck poor people, personal responsibility, blah, blah, blah. You're going to give nice gestures and say, oh, this is terrible. But when you actually look at what's been going on in terms of Congress, there's been nothing that is going on, right? And so I think that is one main takeaway, and I just remember, seeing people camping outside the Capitol and saying, it's great that they're camping outside the Capitol. And then when they got that brief extension, people were all celebrating. And there were a couple journalists, I remember Franco was saying, well, what's next, right? And everybody was pushing him aside, right? And so I think that is just kind of shows what's popular is not always right. And sometimes we need to listen to the people who are really kind of bringing that up. So that's
I think what you just read, some of those numbers indicate, maybe ties into what I said before. So these companies are making all this money. These companies donate to these politicians. These politicians are the ones in charge of distributing the money, and the money's not getting distributed.
Are you suggesting that they're slow rolling distributing this money so they can leverage the situation as to their profit?
No, let's be clear. It's our money. It's our money.
No, not at all. I'm not. I mean, I'm just saying it looks very suspicious to me that the people that's putting money in your pocket
that we voted for.
Yeah, you're saying, hey, okay, I'll slow roll. I'll slow walk this money to the people that can pay you and not be evicted. It just seems very, very, very suspicious that these states have this money sitting there and people need it and they're just not giving it out. Just very suspicious to me.
I'm sure they're trying to figure out how to get themselves a bonus. I saw a little off subject, but I saw that like Mobile, not the CARES money, but the monies that came after that, the city council voted for bonuses for them. And, most of the city workers are working class. Great. But y'all got something else to do than give bonuses to your damn selves. You know, did anybody see AG Garland's response to the eviction situation?
I didn't. What did he say?
Novi did. He said, what was it? He called on all lawyers and law students in the country to start helping people not be evicted. That's the fucking plan. Lawyers volunteering their time. That's yeah.
That's like the Joe Kennedy quote, I think, the infamous Joe Kennedy tweet where he was like, everyone deserves to have a lawyer, access to a lawyer by their side while they're getting evicted or something like that.
Just terrible. These people are just
pure neoliberal speak.
Yeah, it's just awful. But so, what is the next step, though? Like, who said something about that? Franco. Like, what is the next step? So these people are evicted. So, like, what's the money making process? Maybe Austin or Andrew knows this. Like, so how do they make money off of people being evicted? So they're evicted out of these homes. These homes are now they can't be rented, or do they turn around and gentrify the neighborhood? Like, what's happening? You get what I'm saying? Like, what's happening when they evicted? Like, why do these landowners want to evict people?
Go off, Novi.
Well, that's actually pretty simple. Basically, you kick the people out. You do some minor improvements, like you lay a little new tile here, maybe get a new appliance there. Then you upscale the price for just enough so that people are like, oh, hey, what a deal, especially since it's so fucking expensive to live in the city. And then they move in, and then you just start the process over and over again. Baton Rouge, for example, has the same rent prices as New Orleans. The average rent in Baton Rouge is $1,200. We were able to find one that is $650 right on the outskirts of Baton Rouge, and it floods. And that was actually considered a steal because it was the only ADA compliant apartment in the city. Only accessible apartment in the city. So
wow.
Yeah. And yeah, that we could afford. And this just keeps happening forever and ever and ever because they know that people have nowhere else to turn. With rent being so high, you can't save up enough money, especially if the median wage is so low that if you're only making $26,000 a year, and that's the middle wage people are making in the city, they can't afford to put any money back. So this process just keeps perpetuating and perpetuating. While the apartments themselves may look shiny, but they are crap. Trust me, I've had to evacuate because of Hurricane Ida because of my apartment.
Wow, that's just what's happening in Louisiana.
Oh my
terribleness
gosh.
is always happening. You're always describing just awful shit going on over there.
Well, a lot of reason is Louisiana's government is one of the most corrupt in the country. A lot of it is being funded by the oil companies, gas companies, real estate, you name it, they've got it. You know, we basically have an oligarchy on steroids over in Louisiana, and whenever somebody tries to come up to fix it, they get swatted back down. Our first real positive sign is Governor John Bel Edwards, but that's kind of like saying he's Biden to Trump. he's better, but in the sense that
like
he's not
slightly like less than a hair better.
Yeah. So and leftist politics have they've tried to run people, and it's very, very difficult, especially with the controls going on in the city and voter suppression laws. So what a lot of people are doing is investing in mutual aid, including having illegally too many people in an apartment in order to afford a nicer one. So, but that's the only thing that a lot of people can do. And then when you get a hurricane,
but then they criminalize that. That's something that people do. People find ways to get around with these arbitrary things, and then they criminalize the way they get around it so that they can't do it. It's just ridiculous.
Right. Exactly. And it can cause massive issues. Like, we have laws against protesting now in Louisiana. We have laws regarding rent where you only can have 2 cars parked there at once and it could get towed. which makes it very difficult if you have a large family or you're letting people stay on your couch because they have nowhere else to go. So, or you've got more people in an apartment than would technically be advisable. But that's just what's going to happen. The apartments are actually safe to live in, the ones that aren't causing issues. And I'm not following the maintenance guy on the apartments. There's like one maintenance dude and over 100 properties. It's not really his fault. What I am saying is that there's not enough government oversight. There's not enough regulation in order to get things done. And we need to have more things like tenants unions across the U.S. in order to organize. But that's not even good enough right now. We don't have the necessary infrastructure in place. We don't have people in place to get this money out there. The people who are leading the charge are librarians who are literally going to the public library, hey, rent assistance is available and we'll help you do it. But that's not a librarian's job. So what happens when the librarians become advocates because there's nobody else doing it? And Baton Rouge is just a microcosm of what's happening across the U.S.
So what I just hit me was that there's a pandemic going on, and there's a hurricane going on. It's particular in this particular area, and eviction moratorium, and our government is doing nothing.
The only effective part of the government is the public libraries. They have been handing out masks. They've been finding people, getting people assistance through the CARES Act, helping people fight immigration, all these things, which is why conservatives are trying to get them to stop doing that stuff by passing laws in place. Keep your public library open, folks. It may be your only source of help, which is sad. But it's not a great situation at all.
In my public library down the road, there's they've set up a little office in there because unhoused folks come in, and so I back you up on that, Novi. The libraries might be the best place to hold up when the apocalypse comes, though.
Yes, that's just terrible what's happening in Louisiana. Just tragedy on top of tragedy, and Congress is not doing anything. The Democrats run all the branches of government that control legislation. They're not doing anything, and it's just unsustainable. It's unsustainable for people to live like this.
If anything, they're rolling stuff back. I mean, state by state attack on rights of various stripes, i.e., the Texas abortion law. We're talking about but the eviction moratorium. I was looking and thinking about all this, and something I found was evictions started with the Native Americans in the United States. That's where evictions started. And a little note: in 1832, the Supreme Court ruled on the Worcester, I don't know, versus Georgia, stipulating the evacuation of the American Indian tribes was unconstitutional. However, because the president at the time was a racist motherfucker named Andrew Jackson, did not agree with the ruling, it was not enforced. So
terrible.
Right there.
Terrible.
Evictions are illegal.
So, I like that. That's what I want to, that's the point. This goes all back to, why are there even evictions in the first place? Let's talk about that. And what that video didn't do for me was I kept going, and blame the fucking Democrats. Go ahead, get the guts to do it. Blame the fucking Democrats who gaslighted us into voting for them, saying, we will save you, we will prevent all of this. And this is all still in their reign. All of this apocalyptic shit is happening right now and raining down on us. And they are not lifting a fucking finger to help a goddamn soul.
That's true, Liv. Just think about it. What Liv just said. If you think back, the Democrats were going to be better on the pandemic. we're going to be better on the school openings. They're not. We're going to be better on war. Are they?
Biden has said so many times he's not sure.
Everything. We're going to be better on natural disasters. Are they?
But
we're going to be
how
better
can that
with
be?
the pandemic. I don't see where are they better at.
No. This was the president who said nothing will fundamentally change. Guys, do not buy this bullshit. That is the Democratic Party. Nothing will fundamentally change.
Terrible. Just terrible. Does anybody have any personal like? Do you know of a person? Since we're on the eviction moratorium, I mean, it kind of goes with the pandemic. Do you kind of know anybody that is being evicted or on the verge? Or I mean, it might be something that's prideful. Maybe people not even talking about it. But do you know anyone here knows anyone? Luckily, maybe not.
Yeah, Novi.
Okay. They've been evicted, or they're going to evict, or they're on the verge, a possibility, or how would you describe it?
So one of my spouse's good friends in Arkansas is on the verge of being evicted from their apartment. They actually work in a lumber mill, and whenever the people in the lumber mill get COVID because it's too close together, the lumber mill shuts down. So they're constantly on the verge of getting evicted. An eviction moratorium can help, but they're basically selling everything, trying to keep a roof over their heads. And this housing should be a fundamental right? Like housing, healthcare, water, food, everything. And the fact that we've got people who are struggling to try to get together, and I'm also including disabled people who can't work due to a medical or physical condition, who are struggling to keep themselves above water, and having all this shoved down our throats by people who acted like they were friends and fucking lied to us. And then you got rich people on the side who have these huge mansions that I pass through every day on the way to work. It is honestly, we need to commit arson, something. Like that, we have to do a revolution, because all of this politicking, like trying to do a third party, trying to believe in Democrats, it's just not fucking working.
I think when it gets to food and housing, those are factors that will push people to a movement, push people to a general strike. Those two particular, because if people are outside or people can't feed their kids, that's a line that most humans will not be willing to cross for any party. Political party.
When crimes,
I'm hoping so.
Jay, what would you do if you're in that position where
you're driven by crime? This is how crime is. This is how
because it's criminalized.
Right. It's because you need to survive, so you do whatever possible to gain that money.
And it's enforced by the police. Right. # abolish the police.
Right.
Because
so
Liv, the enforcers. Yes.
Liv, tell me more about. Because of what Novi just said, both of you are kind of describing the same thing. When you said, let's talk about why are we having evictions in the first place? And then Novi says housing should be a human right.
Is a fundamental right.
Like, what do you two mean by that? Do you mean like there should never be anybody evicted for any reason? Like, describe what you're talking about.
I am definitely not as well versed in the fundamentals of why housing is a human right, but I believe that housing, healthcare, healthy choices of food and clean water are all rights, and are fundamental rights that we are given just for being born on
and
Earth.
The system provides that. Like the system
and we provide that ourselves as tax-paying citizens. We provide that ourselves, and the government is supposed to ensure that our needs are met, since we are paying for that, and use our money wisely and not on a 20-year war in Afghanistan.
I think you just explained it. You said I'm not well versed, so I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying now. It should be like, we're all pay into it and then we all benefit from it. So it's similar to like a single payer, but it would just be for housing. Whereas like a baseline, you get what I'm saying? Is that I'm assuming that could be a good idea. Let's just talk about ideas, not official things, but I think that would be, a good idea. It would be similar to single payer healthcare. You have single payer housing where you have like a baseline. Now, if somebody has enough money and they want to buy some, extra fancy house, that's up to them to do that. But there should be sort of a baseline that everybody kind of gets this level of housing wherever. I mean, I think that's kind of what the concept is about.
Yeah.
I think Novi, you got something?
Oh, Novi, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I think that is really interesting, and not really interesting, more like really interesting, infuriating, is that while we have people being evicted because all these corporations want to make a little more money, we have luxury condos going up at a far faster rate than anybody can afford or anybody could need. We have a surplus of housing in this country. So, here's something simple. Why can't we just give the people the houses? Making rent affordable. And if they bitch and moan, all the money we use in formulas we could use to subsidize the housing. Make it all Title 8 if you want to. I don't care. If the government actually wanted to do this, they could fucking do it. But they don't want to. We need to operate as a society that actually cares about people. At the start of that is making sure that something that is so fundamental, housing, is available to everyone. More than just available, that they have it. People should not be worried about whether they have a roof over their head.
Yeah.
They just
I forgot if it was on this podcast or we were reading something, but it's similar to, I can't remember. Let me try to pull it up and come back to me. Let me try to see if I can find what that was.
Andrew, did you have something? Or Austin?
Austin, you can go and then I can go.
Yeah, I was looking through history and stuff, and our situation currently is very similar to 1920s, 1930s United States.
You mean
something
having the
that
Great
happened-
Depression and the Spanish influenza happening at the same time?
That is
thing?
exactly.
Yeah.
I should be more. Yeah. Well, something that happened during then is there's a housing act that was passed, the Wagner-Steagall Act in '37, and that started to help. It created public housing, and actually, you fast forward to I think '94 to Clinton, and Clinton goes in and starts gutting it and changing the program. It says the program they try to do transitional stuff and whatnot, but the major point is that we've done this before. And to go on Novi's point, there's at least 10 million. I think I saw in the chat, and I think upwards of 17 million vacated premises in this country. Seize them.
Yes. Housing.
Seize
not
the,
a lack of housing.
Seize the property that ain't being used and put the $500,000 folks.
Those houses are for rich people, though. That's not for regular. That's not
for poor people.
That's not for poor people.
What did they do to earn it?
Exactly. And this is what I was trying to remember before. There has, similar to the rent money being allocated, there's been money allocated for affordable housing, but these housing has not been completed because of the lack of funding. Like, the funding comes so late, by the time that they get it, it's not enough money to cover the start of the construction. And I forget where I was reading this or seeing this on, but yeah, this is a known thing where there's, in several states, several municipalities, there's funds already allocated for affordable housing because of this very thing where people are saying, we got all these vacant houses. Why can't we fill them? Okay, well, here's some money for some affordable housing, but it never gets completed. That's the problem. It never gets completed. That's all I wanted to add.
No, thank you. Those are excellent points.
Yeah.
Adrian.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of going back to sort of the policies, even what Novi was saying. Novi brought up where it's like, people are homeless, just house them, right? right? And there have been other countries, and actually part of Virginia at least has practiced this with veterans. It's a housing first program, whereas if you are unhoused, right, the whole thinking is, what do you do? Well, they need to get housed before they can get jobs or do other things to support themselves. So why don't we actually set up a place where they can have a home, right? And at least that part of Virginia, veterans are there are virtually zero veterans that are homeless because of that program, right? And so if we're talking about solutions, that could always be something that could be expanded on a federal level, right? And I think part of the reason why, this is an opportunity. I think I mentioned this in a previous show. This is an opportunity for us to really think about, okay, what do we do in the long term? How humane is it for people to not have homes, right? And the conversation it's never going to go there, right? We're always going to be talking about, the Supreme Court, this and this, right? And so the more you focus on that, the more hopefully people will start asking questions so that we can actually get there. Austin, I don't know, were you going to say something?
Something popped into my head and then popped out, but little thing, there was a big rent strike back in the day too. So the housing first model, I'm familiar with it. I love it. I'm trying to help promote that around Huntsville. There's jumping back a little bit, there's in Huntsville right now, they're destroying or set to destroy public housing, a whole slew of people. And where are they going to go in the meantime? And also the stuff that's being built, just like Liv said, and I think Novi, it's unaffordable. So they're replacing all the how they're y'all seen this city after city, the lofts, all the little bullshit, fancy horseshit paint. It's a dog and pony show because none of this addresses the fundamental issues of like inequity in pay.
Right.
If people, holy shit, if people were paid fairly, maybe there wouldn't be any evictions.
It all comes down to that, I think. It all comes down to money, to them, how much you're paid. It all comes down to that because it doesn't matter what you want us to pay for, America, overpriced healthcare. If we're paid a good amount of money, we can pay for even all the overpriced stuff that you're trying to shove down our throat. We can pay for. So to me, it always comes down to that. And as you were talking, as all of you were talking, how I don't know if anybody has looked at it this way, but it seems like we're always saying we have to fight for funding that to us seems obvious. Like people need help. That's what you fund. Like, why is this hard to understand? That's funding help, or what is it called when they something proof
future proof?
No, when they target, when they call it targeting, when they really mean they're trying to filter out some people, they don't want everybody to qualify for something.
The barriers, threshold. Means test.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a specific phrase, but I'm just trying to use the right phrase that everybody understands what I'm talking about. But basically, what I'm saying is our government looks at us as labor. So anything spent on us is looked at as labor cost for them. So anything, like any help that we're going to get in any area, to them is just an increase in labor cost. And what do capitalists viciously and vigorously fight against? And that's labor cost. That is their number one thing. And that's what we're seeing, I think. I think that we're seen as labor, and any help given to us through the pandemic, $2,000 checks, that's labor cost. We can't afford that. Can't afford that. $15 minimum wage, we can't afford that. That's labor costs. like everything, Medicare for all. Can't
Labor
do that.
costs.
That's labor costs. If we remove the disincentives like the premiums, then people are going to start using healthcare. Like we can't have that. And it's just so we have to start looking at everything we do. That's how they look at us asking or demanding these things, is that we're demanding the labor cost to go up.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Or we're demanding decency and competency in this world.
Yeah. Which,
absolutely,
to go off what Austin said, all that change that we saw happening, that we liked, that we kind of want to see right now, that happened at the beginning of the 20th century, those were, correct me if I'm wrong, those were backed in all for ideas from socialist organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And
America, the United States was much more progressive back in the day. I know, even though it was super more racist, it was trying to progress. Now, oh God, now.
Because they were scared as shit of the people and what they would do. People were organized back then.
That's right. Unions were much stronger.
I mean, they talk about high taxes now. I think one of the top tax rates at that point was like in the 90s.
In 1950, or in the 50s, like, that's right.
Yeah, it was like, it's like, and it was just, this is another reason why both parties love Reagan, because he was one of the presidents that made one of the largest cuts in taxes. That's why he is revered by like both parties.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
I mean, I think, and one thing I always want to make clear with when people say 90% with Eisenhower is conservatives always in bad faith, and neoliberals always try and say people got taxed 90%. Well, no, it was if you made a certain amount higher than 90% after that, right? So when you think of it, it's really not that radical.
Well, it's like nobody was taxed on the first 10,000, and then
exactly.
You get taxed a little bit more, and then more.
Right.
Yeah, a sliding scale.
And so if you're getting taxed 90%, you're very comfortable with that 90% still, because you're well in this day with this currency, you're well in the millions by then, right? And so that's something always to keep track that, credible news sites and commentators will just ignore.
Yeah, they make 100 million, they still get 10. Make.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And
let me see what I have is on it. I'm sorry, I should have.
Do you have something else, Jay?
No, I was saying to myself, let me queue up the next things.
Yeah.
I should have had the mic when I said that.
You got it.
Go ahead. I'm just queuing up the next thing.
We'll sum that up by saying that's the ruling class versus us, the working class. And if you're not Jeff Bezos or who else, Bill Gates, yada, yada, like when we talk about a wealth tax, like don't worry about it. Like, it's okay. We're not talking about you. Like, things can be rectified by not having billionaires and doing a wealth tax and redistributing wealth and dismantling capitalism and this whole trickle down economy concept. And our next topic, sorry, and I also saw in the chat someone was very worried because I was looking behind me. I have a service dog, and he's getting very anxious, but he's getting ready for bed. I also do have two emotional service cats who would probably make an appearance at some point. So that's what I'm always constantly looking around for. But our next topic is, oh my God, Hurricane Ida, which has just made landfall to me. I'm in Maryland. The storm has come here.
Wow.
Novi, oh my God, I'm so glad you're okay. Novi has personal experience with this, having to evacuate. We got to hear what Novi's going through, and Jay's pulling up something.
Yeah, I have a video. So Novi, if you want to talk over the video, because the video is silent, it's just showing footage of what's happening. So you can talk over it if you like. And the reason we're showcasing Novi is because she lives in Louisiana, and this is where the epicenter of the hurricane. So
technically, she's a refugee now, ain't she?
That is true.
Technically, yes. I'm technically a refugee.
Climate refugees.
Yeah, exactly. And there's going to be more of us. So, the flooding was worst in Huma, Louisiana, which is right on. Okay, if Louisiana's a boot, it's right in the toe of the boot at Port Fourchon, and this is all along the chemical corridor where a fifth of the U.S.'s oil comes through, and Huma is actually a town that completely supports the oil and gas industry, with all of those platforms being out in the Gulf of Mexico. Thankfully, alhamdulillah, none of those platforms were damaged. Otherwise, we would also have that on top of the hurricane. So there hasn't been a whole lot of deaths, which is good, but there has been massive flooding, and New Orleans will be on generator power for the next 2 months. And Huma it's just decimated, as you can see.
Wow. Like you said, New Orleans is going to be on generator power for the next 2 months. Like they're powering the entire city off of just generators?
Yeah, exactly. Because the main power lines that they had for New Orleans some of them went through the river, some of them went through other places, and because of the wind and the flood surge, they all snapped. And guess who we are relying on to get our power restored? Entergy, the same people who didn't weatherize in Texas. I feel better already.
That is terrible.
Yeah, and so there's tons of refugees all across the southern U.S. Some of them went farther north. LSU, the flagship university, they basically canceled classes all this week, and students will be coming back to class next week. Though we don't know when it'll be safe to return back, because we've been told do not return until it is safe to do so. So education's going haywire, everything's going haywire. There are no traffic lights in New Orleans. It's hard to find gas in Baton Rouge and in New Orleans. It's just a entire mess of the entire state. Luckily, few people were killed, which is good. We had enough time to repair, and a lot of people evacuated. But there was a lot of people trapped in houses because they couldn't evacuate. And a lot of this is due to a couple things. Climate change. The hurricanes are just going to get worse. As the sea continues to heat up, it just fuels these hurricanes, making them larger and larger and more powerful. So devastation like this is going to be the norm. Second, while we did do levees, we didn't do enough on the coastline to help protect from soil getting washed away. That would have helped prevent some of this flooding. Additionally, houses weren't rebuilt up to specifications, which would build them higher in order to do that, because there was supposed to be FEMA funding, but there wasn't. The FEMA was slashed under Trump, it was slashed under Bush, and it was slashed under Obama. So, yeah, the levees were updated, which is good, but that's pretty much all that happened. And the Biden has done virtually nothing apart from declare a state of emergency, which is the bare minimum. Bell Edwards is basically doing all he can, but it's limited right now.
That's just that's terrible. So you said you got evacuated, right?
Yes, my entire apartment complex was evacuated. So a couple of people on the second floor stayed, because they basically said that they need to stay just to make sure, and they also agreed to look at our houses afterward. It seems like nobody suffered wind damage, though we don't know on the state of the flooding because it's been hard to contact the apartment manager.
How far are they telling you have to be? Like, what do they say you have to go this distance, or is just simply come out of your apartment and that's it?
If you evacuated from any of the affected areas, you are not allowed to return until the governor says so.
Oh, so they don't care where no one says go here. Like, what if somebody doesn't have a relative or a friend to go like another place? What do they do?
Those are the people who stayed in their apartments, or they evacuated to the churches and the mosques. Thankfully, all of those were open, and fortunately, at least the ones that are built more recently have been designated as hurricane shelters. Like the mosque that I attend as designated hurricane shelter, and it's high enough so a lot of people went there for shelter during and after Hurricane Ida.
There's no
But-
government, because I keep hearing you mention churches and mosques, but what about the government, the state? What are they providing by way of this? Are they providing anything of infrastructure for people to stay during flooding?
There was organizations for sheltering people and getting them evacuated before and afterward through school buses. So that was on a parish by parish basis. FEMA's come in and we're getting calls like, if you got your roof damaged, here's the people you contact for FEMA. FEMA's giving out food and all this stuff, and they're sending phone notifications. But that's assuming you have power or cell service in order to get these notifications. Also, if you can't even go back to your apartment, you don't even know what the damage is.
So you can be away from your apartment several weeks and then show up and come home to a disaster, and then you're just re-traumatized by the same sort of event.
Exactly.
And our government does nothing.
Exactly. I mean, granted, FEMA is doing a lot. One of the members of the mosque, sister there, is in charge of FEMA for the state. And she was able to get a lot of this stuff organized. But even then, she said FEMA has its limits because it wasn't properly funded. And there wasn't enough people on board.
Remember when Trump cut it and said it wasn't needed or something like that? And
yes.
Trump
it's
so terrible.
But all of the presidents have cut it in various ways. I mean, they used like political crises in order to cut it, but they've cut it because they consider it to be essential service.
What do you think? What does everybody here think is going to happen when you don't do anything to tamper down climate change?
Well, Louisiana,
and then you cut FEMA. Then you cut FEMA. Like, what's going to happen? Like, that's just a formula for death.
Yeah, and Louisiana is one of the most diverse states in the United States. It's what has one of the highest Muslim populations. It's not minority majority, but it's actually fairly close. It is also one of the largest wealth disparities. And if you notice, a lot of these places which have been slower to come on are places where there's more minorities than others. Like the wealthier places have been able to get access faster, which unfortunately we've seen is very common. And Louisiana is going to be decimated. It's not going to exist unless we fight back. That's why we're doing mutual aid. That's why we're striking and doing anything in Louisiana. We honestly don't care about what the federal government is, because the federal government doesn't give a crap about us. We have to work on mutual aid and fight climate change. That's the number one concern for Louisianans right now.
That is so very important. I mean, like, people need to understand, like, we are living through the final stages of capitalism, of this empire. Just think about the things that have happened. We have a pandemic and there's no response. We are supposedly the greatest country, American exceptionalism, but we have the highest death toll. We have the highest infection rate. Like, what are we good at? We are losing wars. We're in wars 20 years. We don't have any success out of what war have we won?
Jay, we're good at killing things.
Yes.
Our own people, especially. We start there.
It's terrible. Yeah, and so add that on. That's great. So the military-industrial complex is going around bombing all kind of places. Like, what is happening to America? What is going on? It just seems so disconnected. The story that we're told about America and the reality seems so disconnected. Am I the only one that's kind of like shocked out of, like, this is just crazy? Because I'm watching this video of this water and there's no help.
Well,
there's no government entity. There's no National Guard there. Like, what is happening? They don't care at all about these people.
There actually is a National Guard. National Guard and New Orleans police have been out since the hurricane got left to protect property. And looters will be to protect property. To protect property. And looters will be arrested or worse. New Orleans police are famously uncontrollable, even by the mayor. They're basically a rogue police force. If you have seen any of the news coming out of New Orleans. So the New Orleans police and National Guard there are to protect property from looters and crimes after the storm. So,
like people looting for food.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they're not back at their home.
Yeah, and one of the things that pisses me off the most is I don't mean this in a mean way, but Louisiana is one of the birthplaces of jazz. It's one of the birthplaces of what makes America actually kind of cool. You know, jazz, food, all sorts of great things, and we're completely destroying it because nobody gives a crap, and there is systemic racism and hatred towards the working class. We're giving you all these things, we're giving you all this culture, and you don't give a shit about us. I mean, what are people supposed to do?
That's why I always say this is just so unsustainable. Like people are gonna start to say like life like this can't happen. And I should give some full disclosure. My mom's side of the family is from Louisiana. We just moved out. They migrated to Texas, and my mom grew up partially in Louisiana, and partially in Texas. And then she came here, thankfully, to California. I'm thankful for her every day that she came to California so I can be born here. I probably would be a completely different person if I grew up in Louisiana. Yeah, I just wanted to tell people
You'd
that
still be a very kind and thoughtful person.
Oh yeah, I know I would be that because my mom is from Louisiana. She's the same, person. Dad's from West Virginia, but yeah, that it's terrible. And if our government is not, if the use of government is not for a natural disaster, what else is the use of government for? Like, if the government's supposed to come in when these things happen and be the people saving and paying for stuff, and like these people have to be relocated. So who's taking care of these people? Like, how does FEMA have a limit? That doesn't make sense. How does an emergency have a limit? Like, you're an emergency organization. How do you have a limit on who you help? That is just bizarre to me. I'll pass it back to you, Lee.
It seems like it's just a holding station for government contracts and whatnot that never get deployed, and people just sit back on them and don't do fuck all. With that, I'll tell you what's going to replace FEMA. It's private FEMA for rich people is what the fuck's going to replace FEMA.
If we don't act, that is what it's headed towards.
They're already doing it with fire departments out in California.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know. So let's clarify. Because, Jay, you're talking about the natural disasters. Do you want to specify the pandemic, hurricanes, the wildfires?
That is true. I said that, and it's crazy that all of that is happening within the same month or two. But climate change is not happening. Like, who are these people that are saying this stuff?
Like, you could make an argument that.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say you could make an argument that all of that is from climate change. That even the COVID, because of temperature changes and shit.
Well,
but that right there, it's not a hurricane fucking emergency. It's a goddamn climate emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's go back to Novi since we're on Hurricane Ida. So you've relocated. How far, mileage wise, did you have to travel to be relocated?
600 miles, give or take. I evacuated to Arkansas. That's where my closest family was. My family that was in Louisiana evacuated to Texas, and there just wasn't enough room for us there, so we evacuated to my in-laws in Arkansas, who don't know that I'm Muslim, which is why I'm wearing this. Anyways, I would love.
So I take it they still don't know.
No, they don't. They would disown us, or worse.
Okay, got you. Oh, got you.
Yeah.
I'm from, my family's from the area, so I know people that would disown people if they did that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm relatively okay. Let's talk about the prison population, where many of those prisoners were stuck in the prisons, or the fact that the hospitals are running on generators right now, and we've got sick with COVID patients, and all of these
Mm,
shelters, all these things are COVID hotspots. Oh, and the
yeah.
homeless who didn't have anywhere to go, and they had to go to the shelters too, and now they're in an even worse situation because at the very least before, their tent cities were blown away. One of the good things I
Mm,
can say about Baton Rouge and New Orleans is that they don't have very many laws against the homeless. And a
mm,
lot of people immigrate to this state uh, if they have housing precarity because it is so temperate and because the cost of living is so low, which makes it a lot easier if you don't have housing in order to
mm.
survive. I'm not saying that's a great thing. I'm saying that's just one of the
Just
caveats.
one of the things that happen.
Yeah.
We are a mecca for homeless too, probably because the weather is just,
Yes.
if you have to live outside and it doesn't rain a lot, that's a good thing. So
Yes.
it is a
And
thing.
we don't know the situation. We're just kind of wandering around trying to figure out what's going on. And
Mm,
mutual aid is alive and well in Louisiana. You may not think we have a leftist meme of it. We do. It's just not focused on national politics. It's not
mm,
really even focused on state politics. It's focused on, like I said, climate change, prison labor, and trying to get people vaccinated. Oh yeah, we have one of the lowest vaccination rates. It's not just because the right people on the right. It's because it is so difficult to get a vaccine in Louisiana. It is
mm,
extremely difficult. And it's all because of the lack of funding. We do not have funding to afford our
mm.
essential services
It always goes
because
to that.
when apparently we're good enough to entertain you and make you laugh and get you drunk during Mardi Gras, but when it comes to us
And
needing
old.
help, you just don't give a shit. And I'm not saying y'all
Yeah,
specifically, I'm saying people in general.
right.
And
And
it's
it
just
always comes back to Novi, and like what Andrew says, follow the money. In this case, you follow the money too, and that's the case for everything. Everything is underfunded. Well, public schools. Oh, there's no more school buses. We have to walk. Oh, you got to walk 7 miles. We have no more funding. There's no
See,
more
not
music in
everything is
school. There's no
underfunded
more
though.
there's no
But
more act. No,
but
there is. You're exactly right,
We
because
find
the
funding for the
military just got
police, the
who
Pentagon, the
exactly.
military.
who is going to deregulate the oil companies and give them tax cuts?
Exactly.
That's the purpose of the government there, right? There's a book I read that was a very insightful book called "Strangers in Their Own Land" by Arlie Russell Hochschild. I definitely recommend, because it really just breaks down how Louisiana is the most polluted state in the United States, and it is because the oil companies have so much power there, more power than any other state. And Bobby Jindal was basically their lapdog. He did anything for them, right? And when we think about these hurricanes that have happened, right? It's a fact that hurricanes are more likely to be larger and more powerful when they form over hotter ocean water. So when we take the fact that Louisiana is the most polluted state, that oil companies are literally just dumping their shit into the water all the time, heating up the water, you're going to cause hurricanes to be more intense and come in. And a study that was published in 2020, the National Academy of Sciences, which is a group of researchers at UW at Madison, showed a correlation between hurricane intensity and climate change. And the study found that there was a global increase of about 8% per decade of the likelihood that a given tropical cyclone will become a Category 3 or greater storm, right? So these hurricanes are only going to keep getting bigger, and it is definitely related to climate change. And I think, when people are mocking, a Green New Deal, right? Way too expensive. If you care about expenses, let's talk about how expensive it is when things keep getting demolished and destroyed, and the amount of money it takes to create that. If you're a sociopath and you care about money, right, and the lives is not going to faze you, sure, then let's just talk about how expensive that is to clean up everything, right? So that is just ridiculous. And that is, what those figures I think were coming from there with what is posted.
Yeah, it was from this NPR article, the same one we kind of read from in the beginning. I can kind of read. I'm not sure we actually read this, but I can kind of read a snippet here. Well, first, let's read this part. Ida arrives on the anniversary of Katrina. Ida arrival comes 16 years to the day that Katrina first made landfall in southern Louisiana, causing over 1,800 deaths and 125 billion in damages across the region. Do we have a death toll, or does anybody have a death count for what's happened?
There's been at least 8 deaths, but it's very much unaccounted for.
Okay.
We're
So still a
crediting
lot of
the-
people unaccounted.
So that was recent, it must have been, because I heard one before. So I guess they found out recently more. Wow.
Yeah, we are crediting the fact that the levees got fixed up. Bell Edwards did something right. He really pushed to get these levees completed. Not all of them were, which is one of the reasons why Huma was in such dire straits. That's what the video was from. But Bell Edwards managed to get most of them acquitted, get it ran through Congress, which I'm going to complain about politicians like a lot because they're corrupt and evil. But I mean, when he actually does something right, I get to give him credit on that. Without the upgraded levees in place, and without the advanced warning with the evacuation, and also our technology, which is so much better, which allowed people to evacuate a lot easier, we would have had a lot more deaths. Now it's just people.
So
destroyed.
That's great. And I just on that tangent, anytime anyone does something good, it's fine to say that's okay. I think it gives you intellectual authenticity.
Empathy.
Yeah, it makes you more authentic to be able to say that's a good thing. I don't like Joe Biden; he's terrible, but that particular thing, or I don't like Bobby Jindal; he's terrible, but that particular item, it's fine. I think that gives you intellectual legitimacy if you're able to say stuff like that more frankly. So that was just a tangent because I noticed you said that. So what part of Louisiana, or is there a part of Louisiana where this has been less of a problem or has not affected as much? Novi.
Well, the storm basically went over Huma, which I don't know if you know where that is.
Yes.
But on a map for the general audience, but it went through Huma, and then it traveled northeast through New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and it kind of sideswiped Baton Rouge a little bit. Like we still got most of it, but we didn't get full on like we were supposed to because it kind of turned the last minute. Then it went through Jackson, Mississippi, and on up through Tennessee, and now it's in Maryland. So the northwestern part of the state, Alexandria and Shreveport, they got some rain. They're good.
That's where Shreveport and Beaumont. That's where my family's from. Yeah.
Yeah, Shreveport, Monroe, and Alexandria were relatively good, which is great because that's one of the main locations for evacuation. So the fact that it didn't get the western part of the state is thankful. On side of other hurricanes, Hurricane Laura hit about this time last year, and it hit Sulphur, Louisiana, and all these parts of southwestern Louisiana, and they haven't gotten any FEMA aid whatsoever. So and Hurricane Laura was almost as bad as this Hurricane Ida. It just petered out a lot quicker, and it only went under minor areas with less amount of people.
Well, do you notice more hurricanes happening, or the intensity? I know we know the intensity is going up, but like it seems like these frequency is happening in Louisiana. It seems like it's going up, or at least the severity of the hurricanes are going up. It seems.
Well, I actually did a little research into this because I'm up here in Arkansas. What else am I going to do? And it does seem like there are less hurricanes, but the hurricanes that there are stronger, which isn't exactly a good thing. And
Okay.
I mean, and we can still avert some of the worst effects of climate change, but we have to take action immediately. Which is to say, since our national government won't take action immediately, and some of the strongest action has been due to companies like Amazon, we're not in good straits.
We absolutely are not in a good situation when it comes to that. We want to try to fit in this new topic. So unless anyone had anything to say on this one, I can
just have
set up the
something.
next tweets. Okay,
ahead,
go ahead,
Joe.
and I'm going to set up the next tweets
I'll
for
be
you.
quick, but I want to just say, like, so I work in higher ed, and there's online programs, and we have one student who is part of one of our online programs who lives in Louisiana and had to evacuate to Alabama, and I think they now have to take time off next semester because of everything that happened. And so I think one thing I kind of want to just bring home is just point out just how what we do a lot is talk about how this intersects with a lot of things, right?
Yep.
This person lives in rural Louisiana and is going to school for healthcare. And, they're obviously in rural Louisiana. Aren't that many job opportunities, particularly job opportunities that can uplift your economic mobility in certain ways. And she's going to school. Typically, people go to school to uplift their economic mobility. And now she has to take time off of school because of all that she has lost from all of these things, right? So I think these disasters, people who are trying to do what they can to what we say make more money potentially for themselves, to support themselves and their family. Now they're being set back because of negligence to do with climate change, right? And so, keep doing these things to people, and eventually you're going to have a riot at some point, right? And don't be surprised when it happens, because when you do this to too many people, those are things that happen. So
That's always my point when I say this is not sustainable. Like, people eventually are going to be like, no, that's enough, and that's my point. So I do have the next tweets queued up for you for the next topic.
We talking Texas abortion law now?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's do this
Oh,
video.
goodness.
It'll kind of set it up for you, Liv. That way you can kind of
Let's go.
Yeah, I'll do the first video, which is a video of CNN. It kind of gives an overview, a little bit of what's happening down there in Texas. So let's go Chrome and this one here. Share. Let's make this a little bigger. And here we go.
Ugh, cringe.
Political activist who served as a women's co-chair with the Democratic National Committee, and she joins me now to talk more about this ruling. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start. I want to ask you for your reaction to this new Texas law.
Well, I'm heartbroken, but we all saw this coming, right? The Federalist Society and the Koch network have been working towards this moment for decades. This is a long time coming, and the installation of Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court was the final piece in the puzzle that they needed to make this possible. It's actually quite heartbreaking that we lost Ruth Bader Ginsburg only in October of last year, and already we're seeing so much of her, so many of her achievements being dismantled so quickly.
So what will this new law ultimately mean for Texas women and girls who have unwanted pregnancies, particularly if they've been raped?
Absolutely. So many aspects of the law are particularly heinous. For example, neighbors, any random person can file a lawsuit against a woman or an abortion provider, or even a friend who drives a woman to Planned Parenthood, for instance. They can file a lawsuit and collect a $10,000 bounty. So it's inconceivable to me. And also, you mentioned earlier that many women don't even know that they are pregnant at 6 weeks. This is very personal, but my period has been notoriously erratic throughout my life. I doubt that I would even know. I mean, and this is the same is true for so many other women. And I fear that this is a slippery slope, because now it's abortion, but what about birth control? They're already making moves to prohibit the abortion pill, but what about the birth control pill itself? So many women use birth control not only to control or prevent pregnancy, but also for health reasons. And I had an eating disorder.
Yeah, that's the end of that first video there, but she kind of gives the gist of some of the bad parts of the bill, some of the worst parts of the bill. But I do want to give this the Andrew or Liv. Did you have a bit of a breakdown, or anyone else actually, that you wanted to give about the bill? And then I want to give show some reactions from some people of the bill, like Beto O'Rourke has posted a video on Twitter. But is there anything else that stands out? I don't mean a rundown of the law specifically. Like, is there anything else that has been reported about the law that kind of stands out? Like some of the worst parts, like the worst part I keep hearing is this neighbor being able to report anybody. That is just absolutely ridiculous.
How about this? How about a rapist reports their victim's abortion and collect $10,000? Because that is technically possible.
That is just what is happening in Texas, boy. That is just
They're making Alabama look good.
That is just terrible. But Liv, let's go to you, Liv and Novi. What do you two think about such a law restricting a woman's rights? Like, what do you think about that?
So this is part of the war on women, because part of America is rooted in misogyny, and the control of women in our bodies is a core tenement of America. And so, yeah, some great points that were brought up in the video. 6 weeks is, you can probably hear my pup. So no, we're not doing that right now. I'm on a podcast. Most women don't know they're pregnant by 6 weeks. Also, irregular periods are totally very common. Yes. So it's really hard to track your periods. Or if you're on certain various methods of birth control, like it impacts your period. Like, so many reasons why 6 weeks is not a realistic time frame to put an abortion ban in place.
Do you think it's specifically because a lot more women know they're pregnant at 2 months than they do at 6 weeks? Do you think that specific number of 6 was chosen? Like, why not 7 or 8? Like, what do you think?
I believe part of the reason why 6 weeks is chosen is because that's when so-called other bills, like the heartbeat bills, have been passed, where they're saying, like, they're claiming that you can detect an embryo's heartbeat by that point, where it's therefore a viable human being who could live outside of the womb. So that rabbit hole starts to go once you get to when is it a human? Like, is this an embryo? Like, when you get into the scientific versus religious arguments of our bodies, of my body, of a woman's body and the right to choose and end a pregnancy for so many fucking reasons, I can't even start going on to last.
Let me ask you this question. There's a lot of banter about, religious reasons. But do any of you believe that capitalists are using that? Oh, it's a religious reason, when really they just want you to have a child because they believe the likelihood of that child growing up in poverty and being a worker for them is very likely if you're wanting an abortion. Like, if a person is wanting an abortion, a lot of times, especially in lower income neighborhoods, it's because it's a feeling of you can't afford a child. So what I'm saying is, do you think that is a motive, because how I look at it is it has to be a money motive here to me, because there's a religious motive, because they're just people that just are religious and they think they want to just control everybody. And then there's a conservative motive. So I guess my question is, do you think there's also a financial motive for this?
I'll go. Novi definitely has something she wants to say, but I'll go after Novi.
Okay, I want to break down the religious thing, and then I'll go to the financial thing. Okay, so religiously, the different religions actually vary a lot in this. Protestants are generally anti-abortion in all matters. Orthodox Jews and Muslims actually agree a lot, and Reformists are very pro-abortion. So, for Orthodox Jews and Muslims, with the exception of these really conservative Muslims who we don't really talk about because they're just extremists and they're nerds. Anyways, generally speaking, you have 3 months, 120 days from the point of conception in order to get an abortion. And it is if you're physically or mentally incapable of having a child. Also, if you are financially capable, some schools of jurisprudence and things count that as well. And it has to be the consent of both parents, but woman has the ultimate choice to decide. After that, if the woman's life is at risk, they can still get the abortion, or if it's a stillbirth or a miscarriage, because the woman's life is placed before the child's, because the child's ability to survive is in doubt, whereas the woman is already alive. So the religious thing is complicated, and basically the Protestants have got their dirty hands on it in general. Financially, of course, it's a money-making motive. In order to create a permanent underclass, you have to have enough people to do so, and an abortion is going to be more likely sought by people who are more poor, because oftentimes they can't afford it. Just like you're saying. Like, I know for myself, if I were to get pregnant, I would have an abortion because I cannot physically or mentally carry a child, and on top of that, I cannot financially afford a child. So it's a way to create a permanent underclass, and it's also a way to shame women, saying that you are not worthy enough. You're not only worthy enough not having a choice, but you're not worthy enough to have your own body and have charge of your own life. So it's a
dual
complete
prong.
mess.
You're saying it's both. It's dual prong.
Oh yes, and the Protestants are a huge majority of this country, and they're the main driving wedge. If you looked at the other religions, you would not be having the same issue. Which I think is ironic, because they think Sharia law is so conservative.
And what were you gonna say, Liv, about that question?
Well, I was just gonna say a lot of things. Well, going off like from that video, like first off, like okay, if you're gonna start attacking like abortion rates and like the abortion pill, like who's to say you're not going to come after like birth control and all their methods? And like for like instance, like if we're talking about reproductive health, like I'm on birth control. The reason I went on birth control a decade ago was because of the horrific pains that I was getting, the immobilizing pains I was getting from my menstrual cramps, and I literally could not function because because of my
your
genetic
biology. Your biology.
Something I obviously have no control over, except the only thing that I can do to rectify that so I can actually live and be in comfort is to be on birth control, which, because I have health insurance, is free through my health insurance. But like also what Novi is saying about what you were saying about like how there has to be some incentive is like, of course there's a cost incentive, because I want to make it clear that like abortion is across, like has no gender, no class, no race, no class. Like it is like it is for all. It is for like well, you know what? Like this is just. I don't want to say it's not just women. It's just non-binary.
Exactly.
It's all gender is a social construct. Right. But it's abortion has been going on for like the beginning of human time, and it will be going on until the end of human time. So banning abortions is not the solution, but making it, first off, the cost to get an abortion, which is not, contrary to popular belief, is not funded by taxpayer money, is hundreds of dollars. So first off, how the fuck do you afford an abortion in the first place? And because of course you're thinking like, how would I afford this child? But how do you afford an abortion in the first place? It is hundreds of dollars that you have to pay out of pocket, and that changes depending on what amount of weeks and what in your pregnancy, whether it's going to be a medical abortion or a surgical abortion, which now apparently in some places isn't even legal. So we got to talk about that. So but perpetuating poverty and perpetuating the working class into poverty by banning abortions is definitely happening. There's definitely a profit incentive with the capitalists working our system here. By like, again, this wasn't unforeseen. We knew this was coming. Like, Democrats, where were you, hon?
Absolutely. I'm just looking around. Family just showed up from grocery shopping, so you might hear them in the background a little bit. But yeah, so for this topic, I did want to show a couple of more tweets here before we bring this to the close. We do have to end soon. We got another live stream coming up soon on the channel. So let me play. I do want to get through these tweets though, because they kind of talk about the same topic here. So let me share this first one. This is Beto O'Rourke speaking on the same topic. Here is the Wall Street guy. Who called him that? Was it you, Austin, or Andrew called him the Wall Street?
Well,
people to report.
I called Amy Siskin the Wall Street woman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's sure, he's Wall Street too. So
okay, because I couldn't remember. Okay, so here is Beto.
This is a really tough day in Texas. A lot of you have reached out to me to share with me how sad and frustrated and angry and disappointed you are. And I just want to tell you, I feel the same way. SB 1, the anti-voter bill, passed the legislature yesterday. It's on its way to Governor Abbott's desk for signature. It's going to make it even harder to vote in a state that was already the toughest in which to vote and register in the country. Today also marks the first day of enforcement of the anti-abortion, anti-women's health care bill, basically creating a $10,000 bounty for people to report women who are trying to access health care in the state of Texas. And you can now in this state carry a gun publicly without any kind of background check, registration, or vetting. So yes, we're angry, but let's channel that anger into action and get organized. Help me to register the voters who will make the difference in 2022. Click that link below and join.
Yeah,
vote the Democrats.
That's what I was just going to say. You see how the Democrats are using this to funnel people back to them. It is absolutely disgusting. Let's play this not last video, or maybe it's the last video. This one's a little more informative, and it's talking more about some of the bad parts of this bill here. So let's play this one and see what this reporter is saying.
Julia, help me. I don't get this. Like, maybe I'm misunderstanding it. This actually lets private citizens who have zero connection to the person getting an abortion,
zero
legal action. How does this even work? Why?
That's right. It means someone with no connection at all could be able to get $10,000, just as we just pointed out. It even means you could sue an Uber driver who drives someone to an abortion clinic. These are laws stricter than what we have in place for someone who would drive someone who's about to commit an act of terrorism to the place where they actually commit this act. So it's a very strict law. Right now, the Supreme Court could act on a piece of this if they take up what would be an emergency application from several of those Texas abortion providers, but they did not act overnight. So
Why?
it does go into effect.
On what grounds, Julia, help me. I don't get this. Like, maybe I'm misunderstanding it.
Yeah, so that was MSNBC's.
They should call that the Karen bill.
Yeah, and then I want to end with this last tweet here, and this one is from Michael Rappaport, and some of you may have seen it. It kind of went viral. He is a liberal, so there is a liberal slant to it, just so everybody knows, but it's still something I wanted everybody to kind of see. So is it still opening? Yeah, it's still opening here. And there we go. And let's make it bigger first. Or that's what I'm trying to do. It's not working. Okay, let me start it over with the sound.
Texas, we have an entire fucking problem. You guys are on some Taliban shit. You just allowed a law by the Supreme Court that takes away abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. That's well before many women, especially girls, young girls, even though they're fucking pregnant. The law allows private citizens to sue abortion providers, to anybody who helps a woman obtain an abortion. What the fuck kind of Taliban shit is this? Okay? And the law makes no exceptions for rape and incest. You sick fucks you. You sick fucks you. Aren't these red states? Aren't you Texas people down there the ones who are like, my body, my choice about the vaccine? You're not going to make us get the vaccine, but you want to take away women's right to get an abortion? You motherfuckers, you sick fucks you prehistoric sick fuck Bible thumping motherfuckers you.
I think we can leave it there. You get the gist of what Michael Rappaport was saying. So, but that is essentially a few liberals' reaction to it. That is because, and when I say liberals, because the reaction that is bad is fine. It's just that how they're tying it to the Democratic Party. That's the part I don't, necessarily like, or saying red state or blue state is just stupid people. And, they have that on the Democratic side also. I want to give everybody final words on this particular topic. I'll go around and start with Novi, then Liv, then Andrew, and end with Austin. Your thoughts on the Texas law? Any other comments you wanted to add before we end?
Abortions are always going to be available to those who are rich and know the right people who want to get them. So this just criminalizes poverty. And it is exactly what they want. And guess what? In a couple years, where people who are not able to have abortions have more children, and then they say, oh, it's all these poor people are here to get you. It's self-fulfilling prophecy. I can see it now. But it is, I'm not even saying about population control. It is a woman's right to choose. And regardless of whatever your religious beliefs, even my religious beliefs, it is enshrined in our Constitution that we are a secular society. So we should not be able to listen to some religious whack job who thinks that they can dictate to people what their choices are. I mean, obviously not murder, but other stuff.
Yeah, I get it. Absolutely. Thank you, Novi. And let's go to Liv. Your final thoughts on this topic?
My final thoughts on this topic.
My
I think it criminalizes. I'm looking at the comments and thinking of what Novi just said. Like, criminalizes poverty. Yes, that was the profit incentive here for this bill that the Democrats knew about and could have prevented. The way that the anti-vaxxer, anti-masker movement has taken the "my body, my choice" phrase, and the way we've watched it, like, oh, you're gonna use that now, like, that's funny, that's real cute, like, that's funny. But no, like what we're going to talk about here is, okay, so now you're going to force these women to have kids? Really? So forcing them into the poverty. So how are they going to raise the kids? Really? Oh, but do you care about kids that are also alive right now, like in Afghanistan, like the humanitarian crisis that we just created? Like, do you care about those kids? Like, do you want to talk about kids? Because we can talk about kids. Like, we'll talk about kids. But anyways, abortion.
That's why I always say, Liv, that conservatives are not pro-life. They're pro-birth. No. They're not pro-life, because being pro-life means you're supporting a person throughout his life, throughout their life, throughout her life. That's being pro-life. They're more pro-birth.
They're pro-white birth.
And they're pro-death penalty.
Yes, which just doesn't make any sense. But I'm glad you said that, Andrew. Let's go to you. What are your final thoughts, and then we'll go to Austin for his.
Yeah, I mean, I think, this shows that our government is not whether it be state governments, federal governments, they're not inefficient. If they want to get something done, they'll get it done. And even if it doesn't necessarily represent the majority of views, I think 70% of people are pro-abortion to some extent, right? Like, and so again, it just shows, I mean, I know I say this over and over again, but large interest groups, particularly the evangelical community, that really have lobby politicians and can have all this control and to pass these types of bills. And I think it's just during a time where there's a pandemic, there's a natural disaster, you would think that this abortion bill was some sort of response to that, but it was not. It was taking away things from people, which, as Liv says in many instances, is American as apple pie, taking away things from people when they need things the most. So
I love that. That is absolutely American. That is absolutely American. And Austin, what do you have to say, sir, about this topic? Your final words on that.
Well, I might be joining the Church of Satan, as they have taken it upon themselves to put as part of their religious beliefs abortion. So hats off to them. I salute every citizen of church, and eat shit Nazis. Fuck you, Greg Abbott.
Awesome. And
so I do have one thing. I'll say quick shout out to a fellow Green is there is a Green governor running because Greg Abbott sucks, y'all, and Texans deserve better.
Yeah, we talked to her.
Who is the Green governor? What's his name?
Shout out to Delilah.
She was on this show a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
yes, Delilah for Texas.
Delilah.
Our Delilah.
Yes, he is running for. I didn't know she was running under the Green Party. That's what threw me off. I thought she was running. Yes. So I didn't know the Green Party. So yes, we will absolutely have her on if she's willing to come on and talk. She's great. You can watch some of her own footage to see some of her views on the Populist Voice if you want to check her out. She had a show called As All Get Out with Austin. So check that show out if you want to see her, what she's about. We're going to go around the table one last time, 30 seconds. Everybody has their final 30 seconds to say if you got something coming up, if you're appearing on another show, if you got anything coming up, you got 30 seconds. Or if you don't have anything, you can just say bye to everybody. 30 seconds. Novi.
Just looking forward to being back in my apartment, and we're going to arrange mutual aid in the Baton Rouge area. So if any of our viewers are from Baton Rouge or the area, if they want to help out, hit me up on Renovation 1409, and I'm trying to help get workers for the organization to try to help people crawl back from this natural disaster, because our federal government isn't doing nothing.
Absolutely. And Austin, 30 seconds, sir. What do you got coming up? What you got
I actually missed a redistricting meeting this morning. So everybody out there, the census is out. Redistricted meetings are happening all across the country. And if you don't know what gerrymandering is, please look it up. And also look up when the meetings are happening for your state your town. Get out there. 2-minute speech, draw maps. Dave's redistricted. Yeah, get out there.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to Liv. What you got going on? What's your final thoughts?
Oh, trying to sum up everything we have. Okay, I'm like checking outside right now to see if it's still raining. Climate change is real, y'all. We gotta do something about it. Green Party was the first group to come up with the Green New Deal, not this shitty Dem Green New Deal. We need a legitimate Green New Deal. The real deal new Green New Deal, people. That's what we need. And we need it yesterday. Because climate change is fast approaching here and expediting, and we got to do something about it. Hands off my body. Like we gotta. Again, also with that, what we can do, and with climate change and everything else, is mutual aid to help fund the general strikes that are coming up. But mutual aid, just that can always be going. Keep funding that. Mask up. Be safe, y'all.
Absolutely. And I believe, Andrew, your final thoughts is the last one we have here.
Yeah, so right now in Boston, the Medicare for All March network is continuing to make moves when it comes to pushing politicians to co-sponsor the Medicare for All bill in Massachusetts. Just this past Saturday, I unfortunately wasn't able to make it, but there were a bunch of people who showed up to Richie Neal's house, who is a congressman who is in charge of the Ways and Means Committee on the federal government. They showed up outside his house and protested. And right now, we are in the process of collecting progressive organization signatures on a letter to Sidney Friedman on the state level, who is blocking Medicare for All in her committee to have it up for a vote. So right now we are in the kind of the more nice push stage, sending out email campaigns to politicians, but we definitely have other plans in the works to continue to push our politicians on this Medicare for All bill. So hopefully Massachusetts can become a state that passes Medicare for All. So
that's wonderful. Sounds great. California is doing something similar. I think it's called Cal something. I forget. But they were at the Medicare. Yeah, that's it. Cal Care. They were at the Medicare for All March in LA when I was down there, and I interviewed them on there. So what I got is General Strike Summit. We're trying to plan that, and that's just a 3-day live stream event where we're discussing strategies and ways to plan for a general strike. So that's coming. I'll announce the date as soon as we get it. Outside of that, I want to thank the panel for joining us tonight, and thank everybody who made comments. Thank all of the people who support Fred Hampton Leftists. We are trying to continue this work of educating the people and educating ourselves by the people. So we're going to be signing off with the New Left podcast. I always got to remember that. So give everybody a chance to say bye, and we're signing off now.
Good night, y'all.